sides progress to the third round of World Cup qualifying. Meanwhile, Antigua and Barbuda, they are in last in the group, but 3 points, depending on the results of the Honduras match later today, could send Antigua and Barbuda into the top 2. Of course, Honduras taking on the Cayman Islands, so that result could definitely affect where these teams are placed, depending on results here and elsewhere. Well, for both these teams, it is a chance to return to form. You look at Antigua and Barbuda making a coaching change for the 3rd time in the last calendar year. Jacques Passy, an international coaching specialist with history in Dominican Republic, as well as St. Kitts and Nevis, where he was most successful. He's tasked with rescuing a team from an 11-match winless run that dates back to October of 2023. They take on a Cuba side that, on the other side of things, also struggling. Relegated from League A once again in this past year's Nations League and falling short of its 2nd Gold Cup in the last 3 cycles. And if you know anything about Cuba's footballing history, a regular participant, especially the last 3 or 4 decades in the Gold Cup, that is considered a disappointment. So both these teams hoping to get their World Cup qualifying slates going in the right direction. Neither side has actually achieved a physical victory on the pitch, despite Cuba having 3 points. Those 3 points awarded due to a forfeit. Cayman Islands unable to travel to Cuba last June, and as a result, they were awarded a 3-0 victory. Cuba was. Meanwhile, Antigua and Barbuda, it was a hard-fought draw that unraveled at the death. Led for 1-0 for the bulk of that Bermuda match. Were forced to settle for a point on June 5th of last year, and then falling at the Cayman Islands, also conceding in the 91st minute. A familiar bugaboo for the Bennett boys that they'll be hoping to clean up this afternoon. Just getting geared up here for kickoff. Jacques Passy, will touch a lot more on him throughout the broadcast, but this is a chance for him to reinvigorate a side that has fallen nearly 90 spots in the FIFA World Rankings in the last decade. And he's someone who's known for saving struggling international squads. Took St. Kitts and Nevis to their highest ever FIFA World Ranking back in 2018. He was a finalist for 2018 Concacaf Coach of the Year. Meanwhile, on the other side, Yunielis Castillo, his 3rd year at the helm. It is his 2nd slate of competitive fixtures after his side fell 6-1 on aggregate to Trinidad and Tobago in the Gold Cup prelims back in March. Both sides rotating rather heavily from that, especially Antigua and Barbuda, which has brought in a lot of young talents from the U20 ranks to try and instill life within the squad. We'll get to lineups and everything else in a matter of moments, as well as the background on both of these clubs, just hoping to rectify rocky runs of form on the international stage. It's a Cuba side slightly more battle-tested than their Bennett boys counterparts here in 2025. Of course, the hosts competing in their first competitive slate of fixtures since November of 2024. And that is when League B of Nations League play came to an end. They have not seen the pitch since a 0-0 draw against Dominica on November 19th. Get your look at Cuba. Also a team that has achieved a victory in recent memory. That was the 4-0 throttling of St. Kitts and Nevis to reach the Gold Cup prelims. Only 1 win in the last 8, and definitely has their eyes set on making an impression here this afternoon. Both teams getting set to take the pitch in a matter of moments. We will step aside here from the outskirts of St. John's, Antigua and Barbuda and Cuba, when we return a look at lineups and kickoff from the ABFA Technical Center.
we have the national anthem of Cuba, followed by the national anthem of Antigua and Barbuda.
Just about set for kickoff from the ABFA Technical Center in the outskirts of St. John's in Antigua and Barbuda. It is the Bena Boys of Antigua and Barbuda hosting Cuba, Los Leones del Caribe, in this major World Cup qualifying tussle, the third of 4 matches for both of these sides in Group A. Sam Goldfarb bringing you all of the action. We are in Pigot's, just an 11-minute drive from the capital city of St. John's on the island of Antigua. We're just about ready to get a look at our starting lineups for the afternoon. For the hosts, Antigua and Barbuda, and the new headman, Jacques Passy. He makes a number of changes and a 5-back. The biggest addition, 2 additions from the MLS Next Pro ranks, Amir Daly and Drake Hadid, 2 youngsters who enter the fold. If you're looking for proven commodities, Raheem Detterville up front is definitely that, a pair of goals to his name in 19 international caps. We have a decorated crew presiding over this fixture here in Antigua and Barbuda. We'll get a look at the officials in a matter of moments. It is a picturesque afternoon, at least for the time being, here from the island of Antigua. We mentioned potential for storms later on in the day, but the weather looks pretty nice at the moment. Quincy Williams, Ainsley Rochard, Angelo Doyle, his assistants, Timothy Derry, the 4th official here this afternoon. The captains exchanging pleasantries. They are Luther Wilden for Antigua and Barbuda and Raiko Rosarena, the goalkeeper for Cuba. And here's your look at Unielis Castillo's 11. A few changes from the March fixture against Trinidad and Tobago. You see Raiko Rosarena still between the sticks. He's been the first choice for the last year or so. But as you move further up the pitch, there are some difference makers. For those familiar with the English game, Onel Hernandez, the former Norwich City man in the EFL Championship, is definitely a lad to watch. Well, we're just about ready to get things going. We await Quincy Williams' signal, and underway here from the island of Antigua, Cuba. In the red with the blue accents going from right to left on your screen, Antigua and Barbuda. The yellow with black numbers from left to right. We thank you for joining us this afternoon. A lovely day here on the island of Antigua. And both squads hoping it will be a lovely day on the score sheet. 3 points would go a long way to powering either of these two squads into the top two, especially Cuba. And with a result today, would almost certainly go second. Well, for Cuba, we've alluded to the struggles, the missed Gold Cup. There are certainly hopes that they can kickstart a winning vein of form for a squad that, at least back in the day, in the early 2000s, was a force to be reckoned with on the Concacaf stage, not to mention right around the start of their existence as a national team in the 1930s when they made a World Cup. Already a player down for Antigua and Barbuda. And Amir Daly just slow to return to his feet. An international debut for the FC Cincinnati two-man. Perez, 19-year-old fullback. It is a Cuba squad that does trend a bit younger, but not in comparison to Antigua and Barbuda, as the offside flag is raised. Goes against Orlando Cruz, the right back. Orlando Calvo, 26 years old, out of Camito, Cuba. Perez. It's read well by Daly. Well, it's certainly 5 at the back for Antigua and Barbuda, who is led by that man, Jacques Passy. We've already spoken about his international qualifications, a candidate for 8th CONCACAF Coach of the Year back in 2018 for the efforts he put in with St. Kitts and Nevis, leading them to their highest FIFA World Ranking in history. Then also underwent a stint simultaneously in charge of the Dominican Republic senior and U20 sides before eventually moving back to the international ranks in April. It was a turnover-laden Nations League campaign for Antigua and Barbuda in 24-25. Winless in the first 4. They part ways with their longtime head man, Mikel Ledgerwood, who those may be familiar with him for his time with Reading as a player. Brought in an interim man to finish out the campaign, and now Jacques Passy is tipped with guiding them back to the promised land. Side that, in its history, has been a runner-up in the Caribbean Cup. There's your look at the goalkeeper, Taj Moore, just his 2nd international appearance. Native of St. John's, the capital city, who debuted in the finale of that Nations League campaign. Kept 2 saves and a clean sheet against Dominica. So doesn't do much to lose the spot and has another chance to solidify what is a wide open goalkeeping room for the Bena Boys. It is a team that has listed upwards of 6 goalkeepers on what is a 45-man roster for this 2-match slate in the World Cup qualifiers. As Onel Hernandez latches onto this. Bravo sprays it wide. There's Calvo. And an overzealous challenge in the end. Or 5 minutes gone. Here from ABFA Technical Center, a venue that seats about 1,300. It's packed to the gills today. Antigua and Barbuda hosting Cuba, the third World Cup qualifying match for both of these sides. Cuba right now just a point shy of the top two. That man, Unielis Castillo, at the helm since 2023. He was tasked with revitalizing this Cuba side after they went pointless in the 2023 Gold Cup. Fortunately, the 24-25 Nations League was a bit of a frustrating one for his bunch, relegated to League B and failing to qualify for the Gold Cup. Rabayo, excellent link up to the edge of the area. It's not a bad effort. No deflection, though, according to our linesman. Unielis Castillo, he began his tenure during the 23-24 Nations League, and he did manage to keep Cuba up despite managing just one goal in the entire slate. But unfortunately for him, this past fall was 3 draws and a defeat. They finished 2 points adrift and were one of the 2 sides relegated to League B. Was defeating against Trinidad and Tobago, which ultimately helped doom them. So 3-1 on the final day, which allowed the Soca Warriors to leapfrog them and stay up. Blasted forward by Cavafe. Plays in the Spanish 4th tier. It is a Cuba side that has loosened some of its squad restrictions over the past few years or so, allowing players who play at foreign clubs to join the fold a couple years back, and then in March, allowing foreign-born players of Cuban descent now to represent Cuba. That's why you see Jorge Aguirre starting up front. 25-year-old who currently plays in the Portuguese top flight. Was born in Spain, but is of Cuban descent and has elected to represent Cuba. Il Vicente. He's in the same league as FC Porto and Benfica, for those unfamiliar. Blasted forward. Catasus will let it run out of play for the match's first corner kick. Onel Hernandez to take. He is a veteran of the English game. Countless years with Norwich City. Back in the day, featured in the Premier League as well. About 5-6 seasons ago. Within swing. It's overcooked beyond everyone in the red and blue kits. Here's your look at Leroy Graham, one of many players who play their club trade in the Antigua and Barbuda Premier Division, which is the top flight of Antigua and Barbuda. They do also have some representation from players who are English-born of Antiguan descent who have opted to represent Antigua and Barbuda. And the quality increasing as a result. A few players on the roster who have featured in the EFL Championship. The notable one, Luther Wilden, has played from League 2 to League 1 as well. longtime Stevenage Town player. Set the record as well for most caps in the AFL ranks by a Stevenage player in April, so very experienced and battle-tested. 10 minutes gone, still no score between Antigua and Barbuda in Cuba. We thank you for joining us here this afternoon, 3 p.m. local time in Antigua. One-way traffic so far. An effort from afar. Tajmore all over it, but not a bad pop from Pedro Bravo. Just wonder, for a Cuba side that at times struggled to find the back of the net in competitive fixtures these last few years, how they handle a back five of Antigua and Barbuda that appears to be prioritizing defensive solidity above all else. Catasus. Out wide to Calvo. Taking it forward. Oh, kindly for Bravo, who didn't exactly make the best of that opportunity. Decent interplay here. You see Bravo not shy about uncorking one. Was bending beyond the reach of the goalkeeper, but Tajmore all over it in his second international start. What's most impressive about him is just 19 years old, and obviously that is commonplace. A lot of Antigua and Barbudan players debut in their teenage years. In fact, the youngest player to debut was 16 on this squad. Tajmore also playing in the Canadian college ranks at Brock University. Made one appearance there in 2024. So while he's conducting his college career, he's also featuring for his country's national team. Down for Cuba now on this near side. So far, very little rhythm from the hosts. Coming in, you would have likely expected Cuba to be the aggressor. But you look at the world rankings, and Antigua and Barbuda is actually positioned slightly above Los Leones del Caribe. Antigua and Barbuda right now in the low 150s. Cuba right now around 150, 167. There's a giveaway. And options on the counter now. Aguirre spraying it wide. Comes to Catasus. Espino. Blasting it from long range. Always rising, never tipping. So there is just an 8-spot chasm in the FIFA World Rankings between these two entities. Cuba exactly 167, Antigua and Barbuda 159. It's an 89-spot drop from where they peaked about 11 years ago in October of 2014. To get another look at this build-up, Cuba just no answers trying to play through, so can't fault Espino from trying. A shabby effort by any means. This is the only match today in Group A. Tomorrow, of course, Cayman Islands hosting Honduras in a match that definitely will define how the table looks. Right now, Honduras top of Group A. Either of these sides win, would navigate themselves either into the top two or, in the host case, Antigua and Barbuda. It would depend on goal difference whether they manage to edge their noses in there. Each of them do have a match in hand on Bermuda, who currently sits second. So right now the biggest onus would fall on Honduras to beat the Cayman Islands. I believe that would be in both of these nations' best interests, at least at this current moment. Late tackle, and one that definitely draws the ire of our official. ABFA entering the book, clattering right into DeAndre Bishop. This is definitely a concerning sight for both parties affected. ABFA, one of the defensive leaders. You see Bishop gets to this first, and oh, it's not a coming together that benefited either side of the equation. An early booking for the Havana native. Plays his trade with Union Tarve in the Spanish 4th tier. He was named to that historic World Cup qualifying squad in the 2022 window that allowed players that played for clubs in foreign nations to participate. His 25th international start since. On the other side, there's definitely going to be some concern for DeAndre Bishop, 22-year-old who's spent the bulk of his career in Antigua and Barbuda's top flight. Was the 4th youngest player to feature for the national team back when he was 16 years of age. One of the more proven entities going forward for the Bena Boys. Taken too quickly for our referee's liking. Well, for those that missed us off the top, Antigua and Barbuda playing for a little something extra today. It's a side that has not won since October 14th of 2023. Came in a Nations League victory at Bermuda by a 4-1 scoreline, but since then, 11 matches winless. Cuba, it's only won in the last 8 in terms of victories. Well, that won't matter if either of these two sides can put themselves in the driver's seat. There's Bishop back into the fray. Looking for Detterville up front. Catasus. On the precipice of 20 minutes gone, neither side creating many definitive chances of note. In fact, neither keeper properly tested just yet. It has been Cuba as the aggressor, but very little to show for it, as Aguirre's ball evades everyone on that far side. And you just wonder if maybe some of the heavy squad turnover that both of these squads have experienced in the past year or two has affected things. Unieles Castillo's had a more consistent pool of players to pick from, but with the additions of players from abroad coming into the fold, the younger players as well, everyone's still trying to get on the same wavelength. I think it's easy to forget that few of these players actually play together at the club level. The advantage Antigua and Barbuda has is there's at least some consistency just due to the sheer number of players playing in their domestic top flight and playing together as well. Detterville gives chase. Well, keep your eye on 7 in the yellow and black kits. Already mentioned his domestic success. Someone who's the back-to-back Antiguan and Barbudan Premier Division top scorer. 42 goals in league play in the last 2 years. Raballo. He's sent tumbling, and this is a free kick in a very appetizing position for Cuba. First yellow shown to an Antigua and Barbuda player. Amir Daly cautioned on his international debut. We get another look here. Raballo just trying to outwit his defender. Perhaps a harsh yellow, this, but it is consistent with the nature of the first one. Now it sets up Espino and Hernandez, both of whom not shy about delivering from a distance.
Yellow card was issued further with a yellow card for Cuba in the 60th minute. Number 4, Carlos Vasquez. And now a yellow card issued to number 9 of Antigua Barbuda in the 22nd minute of play. Amir Daly.
Hernandez to take. It is right into the bottom of the wall, and no issues for Antigua and Barbuda. A lot of flash and very little substance in that set piece. Midway through this first half, Sam Goldfarb bringing you all of the action. Raballo trying to collect that vertical ball. It was well timed by Taj Moore off his line. Has been the story of things. Cuba knocking it about with relative confidence, but very little incision that has been associated with their possession. Their only 2 shots of note have both come from outside the penalty area. Antigua and Barbuda still trying to calibrate the counterattacks. Figure once they're able to split lines with more regularity, that's when they can strike some fear into this Cuban back line. Decent idea to switch. Hernandez first to it, and he does win Cuba a corner. Taken short. They're only as far as Calvo. This is Bravo. Probably the brightest bulb in the Cuban 11 so far. Well, not much for him to worry about. Pretty smooth sailing for Taj Moore through 25 minutes of action. Handling the free kick, assembling of his wall rather well. Timing runs off his line, showing good instincts. I'm surprised that he's been rewarded with the start. Well, it is a warm day in Antigua, and as a result, we have a cooling break midway through this first half. It's humid as to be expected for this time of year on the islands. We mentioned 83 degrees at the time of kickoff. Of course, this is right around where peak temperatures hit. 3 p.m. local time at kickoff. The humidity doesn't help either, and the turf playing surface probably exacerbates that matter as well. Both coaches going over their tactical breakdowns. It's a Cuba side that has never lost to Antigua and Barbuda. The seven of 7 meetings, this is the 8th. 6 wins. And they won both meetings in their last interchanges in the 2022-23 Nations League. Most recent of which was a rather comfortable victory. Both were multiple goal victories back-to-back. In the home window for Cuba, winning 3-1 at the Estadio Antonio Maceo in Santiago, the capital city, and then a 2-0 victory just 4 nights later on the island of Antigua. Well, there is your look at the man to watch up front, Jorge Aguirre. I've already mentioned the high pedigree that's associated with him. Just his 2nd international call-up since Cuban Football Federation allowed foreign-born players to join the fold. He is incredibly talented, drew the eyes of Real Sociedad early in his youth career, and was an excellent forward for both their C team and B team before departing and finding success elsewhere. Now for Gil Vicente in the Portuguese Primeira Liga. Detterville is unable to pick out his counterpart going forward. It's read well here by Daly, though. No space to run into for Antigua and Barbuda. A rare sojourn forward. Cross comes in, an inviting ball, but when that Zafik Drew cannot pick out a teammate from. Antigua and Barbuda, though, will settle for their first corner of the afternoon. First proper test for Raiko Rosarena to cope with, who's hardly had 2 touches of it. PJ Bramble makes his way over to it. Of Dartford, England, who plays for Welling United in the English 6th tier, a tier below the National League. And just right on the precipice of 30 minutes, this is probably the brightest spell for Antigua and Barbuda going forward. Arcing ball toward the near post. Aguirre first to it. Pinged back in, and rather routine for Raiko Rosarena. It's the first time we've mentioned Rosarena's name. 28-year-old, plays for Las Vegas Lights in the USL Championship, the 2nd tier of American football in the United States. Has been the regular for Cuba since around the midway point of the 2023 Gold Cup. He was slotted in for the 2nd match and has hardly let go of the the figurative number 1 jersey, so to speak. effectively made the number 12 the number 1 kid. Aguirre flicking it along. Katasus. Dealt with comfortably by Antonio Morgan. Calvo. Bravo. Plenty of space now. We approach the business end of this first half. Still no major chances of note for either side. Antigua and Barbuda prioritizing defensive solidity, waiting for its chance to break. Cuba knocking it about, but very little in terms of clear-cut chances. A 0-0 scoreline between the Pena Boys and Los Leones del Caribe. Perez is hoping to change the complexion of things. Katasus dropping into that fulcrum role quite nicely. Just overcooks it for Calvo. Bravo. Cavafe. Aguirre. Not a bad ball forward. It's one that Arabayo latched onto. Katasus. Aguirre. That final ball just eluding Cuba at the moment. Early cross in, deflected, still loose. Towards the back post and no one in red to greet it. But finally, some definitive structure with the way they build up. Now a cross into the back stick. Carol Perez. Finally, the chance is lost. Well, that was a nice bout of invention from Los Leones del Caribe. And if there was anyone running late into the box there, they probably have an opener.
Just make sure you follow the game at all times, okay? Just keep it on the game, right?
Long throw.
Press it from there! Press it from there!
Right now, as things stand, if we do end in a level scoreline, which still plenty to play before we reach that point, Cuba would move into the top two because they have the goal difference advantage over Bermuda. Of course, when they were awarded the victory over Cayman Islands, the standard in FIFA for a forfeit is a 3-0 win. So Cuba, despite falling 3-1 in their opener at Honduras, they have a positive goal difference due to the forfeit. Perez just overweighting that cross. More forward passing, though. They're picking out key playmakers in key spaces. The issue is that was nowhere near Ono Hernandez or the late runner in Pedro Bravo. But a draw, at least for Cuba, not the worst result in the world. They end their qualifying with a 6-pointer against Bermuda. So depending on the Cayman Islands result against Honduras tomorrow, they could control their own destiny entering the final match day with a draw. Although I'm sure Unielis Castillo is not prioritizing a point, especially given the way they've set up to press the issue. He's definitely, though, a heightened beacon of opportunity with the expanded World Cup and now 6 teams from Concacaf guaranteed going. Rabayo did well to outwit his defender, but Taj Moore was there first and may have been dealt an unwanted parting gift. That he has done. Taj Moore, the 19-year-old goalkeeper, is slow to return to his feet after Bio may have left him with some studs to the leg. Well, it's not intentional. You see, it's a clever body feint by Rabayo to shake his defenders, and he's trying to leap over the goalkeeper. No intent to kick that once it's in his gloves. And a nice show of sportsmanship between the two.
You're on screen every time, but that's why I said keep the camera up. You're on screen every time.
And as we were talking about, of course, 3 teams from CONCACAF already qualified. Those the host nations of the United States, Mexico, and Canada. But then beyond that,
find something at halftime.
once the teams progress here to the 3rd round, that would be the final stage. It'll be 3 groups of 4 teams each. The winners of those groups automatically qualify. So at a minimum 6, and then the 2 highest ranked in terms of points, 2nd place teams would face off in inter-confederation playoffs, which is always a very fun experience in the wintertime. Already some teams qualifying in other confederations at this point as well. Still a large swath of the 48-team field is in question. See, Perez just takes this shot to the face from Bramble. Seems a little displeased with the referee's decision. Cavafet approaching the final 5 minutes of this first half. And as things stand, it's a stalemate, a chess match that neither side is winning at this stage. Nothing, no malice in this. It's just Detterville taking an unfortunate shot to the face. Everyone in the venue holding their collective breath because he is one of the more dynamic playmakers going forward for the Bena boys. And is Raheem Detterville, 25-year-old who plays for Old Road FC in the Antiguan and Barbudan top flight. Seems content to try to walk this off. He is a goal-scoring machine in Antigua and Barbuda's domestic league.
Can he come in right? come in.
Carol Perez. ABFA, progressive ball to Perez. Chipping it towards the back stick. Hernandez does well to keep it in play, but a first-time cross finds nobody in red or nobody at all.
Hello.
40 minutes gone. 0-0 between the Bene Boys and Los Leones del Caribe. One of the more evenly matched fixtures on paper, especially when you look at the Concacaf and FIFA World Rankings. And nothing to separate them, fittingly enough.
Active zones.
Atasus is sent tumbling. Detterville is prone on the pitch again. A lot here for Quincy Williams to contend with. Did not seem to be any foul play, at least that contributed to Detterville's fall.
Van. Hilaro.
And he will at least try to get to halftime as he gingerly walks off here.
Tell me, please, Visio. Visio.
Giving him the thumbs up. Closing stages now, and you figure we will have a fair bit of time added on. Not too much in the way of stoppages for celebrations, but definitely for minor injury scares, as well as the cooling break midway through this half. Catasus wanted the run of Aguirre. Espino. Calvo. Aguirre. Weaving through defenders. He reads the switch well. Aguirre snatches it back, and no whistle from our official. Catasus. Right now, Antigua and Barbuda still struggling to play out. Matos chipping it wide, cutting inside. Raballo winning yet another corner for Cuba, but that was well done defensively for the Bene Boys. Forcing him wide. See Hernandez weaving through traffic again, and Raballo has made a menace of himself going forward. This time no different. If Daly and company don't at least alter his path, he's directly through on Tajmour's goal. Final minute of this initial 45. This time a corner kick without swing beckons. Well, Hernandez has gotten some target practice. We'll see if this pays off.
6 seconds!
Hearing word it'll be 7 minutes of added time that separate us from intermission. Hernandez, without swing, stood up at the near post.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, and the fourth official.
And a foul anyways against Cuba.
7 minutes of added time before the half. It is still 0-0. 7 minutes.
Well, it's not a surprising number, just given the sheer number of injury stoppages, the cooling break, as we alluded to previously. The question is, can one of these teams produce a plot twist before the break? Because as things currently stand, neither side has created a definitive chance of note. I've mentioned the match script ad nauseum. It is Cuba bossing proceedings. It is also Cuba that hasn't created much in the physical Antigua and Barbuda penalty area.
Cautious for the win! Cautious!
As this wears on, especially if we head deep into the second half with the current state of affairs persisting, you wonder if and when the Benin boys start to get brave, because it's not just the center backs that are concentrated at midfield for Cuba. Their fullbacks are not shy about bombing forward, creating those overloads, and whipping in crosses at will. One giveaway, and there is space on the counter. Floated ball to the edge of the area. It falls for Hadid. Maybe caught between two minds. No one in yellow there to finish it off. Well, set piece is also a point of danger for Cuba to monitor. That was definitely an eyebrow-raising moment for the Benin boys. Catasus, Palvo. Looking for Aguirre, who's seen his impact grow over the course of this half. Midway through a bout of our stoppage time, give or take. Espino. Bravo. Nearly gave it away in a costly spot. Instead comes to Carol Perez. Early cross to the back post. Just beyond the run of Catasus, but a positive idea from our fullback. This could have been costly. Bravo negotiated himself into trouble and then got himself out of it. And it's a cross with a fair bit of whip. Once again, a similar trend, at least on this near side. Crosses overcooked towards that back post. Rosarena under pressure for the first time. Matos. He's been a key factor going forward for Cuba over the past couple seasons, couple years I should say. Have not seen him pick up the ball in many dangerous spots thus far. Neil Matos, trio of goals and now 33 international caps. And he did also supply the crucial dagger late in the victory over St. Kitts and Nevis in the Gold Cup play-in round. For Cuba, of course, finishing in 5th in their group in the Nations League. They were rewarded, so to speak, with a play-in round, and they actually fell in the away leg to St. Kitts and Nevis. It required a throttling at home in order for them to overcome that and at least book a date in the prelims. Even held an early lead in the first leg of the Trinidad clash, but then were caught out on either side of halftime, and the second leg definitely did not go according to plan in their last competitive fixture. 4-0 defeat at Trinidad and Tobago, which cost them the tie. Deflected cross, falls to Aguirre. It was deflected, cleared out to Bravo. Excellent defensive scramble from Antigua and Barbuda. Play on from our official. Calvo. Rather anticlimactic end to that spell. Well, once again, you see Jorge Aguirre making something out of what appeared to be very minimal when the cross was deflected. Just wins a foot race with his defender and would have had the goal gaping if not for the late intervention. Closing stages of our 7 minutes of stoppage time. Perhaps time for one final break forward for Cuba in this first half. Matos. To Aguirre. Forced wide. One more corner before the half is out. Will be Diego Catasus, the 20-year-old, to take. We are now beyond the 7 minutes. Hooked towards the back post and knocked in! Cuba strikes on the precipice of halftime, and it's Pedro Bravo opening the scoring. Well, just what the doctor ordered for Los Leones del Caribe. Flashing very little incision in the final third, but this is a perfect set piece. Bravo running onto it with impeccable timing and clattering it into the top left. A first international goal for Bravo and a first for Cuba this afternoon. Pedro Bravo, a 23-year-old who moved to the Costa Rica second tier from his boyhood club in Cuba last summer. Working his way into the regular national team of late on just his 5th cap as his first international tally. Cuba 1, Antigua and Barbuda 0. Is there an instant retort before intermission? Decent ball from Morgan. Comes out to Robayo, and that is where we leave things. So a first half that was rather unassuming for large spells has a very emphatic ending. Pedro Bravo opening the scoring with almost the last kick of the half in the 52nd minute to give Cuba a 1-0 advantage before the break. We will step aside briefly here from the ABFA Technical Center when we return to look at the standout moments from that first half. Stick with us.
Including abusive and offensive or disruptive language or behavior was subject to sanction, including injection from the stadium, or may be subject to arrest. No one is permitted to throw, object, or trespass on the field. Violators will be ejected and may be subject to arrest. If there is an uncomfortable or disorderly situation in or around your seating area,
Back here from Antigua and Barbuda, just about set for the second half of action between the Bena Boys and Los Leones del Caribe of Cuba. And as things stand at intermission, a 1-0 advantage for Cuba. Pedro Bravo with a scintillating strike on the stroke of halftime to put Cuba in front after a first half of relative frustration, dominance, but very little to show for it. And Antigua and Barbuda making a double change as they chase this one. Kalano Isaac as well as Sean Tomlinson entering the fold. Isaac is replacing Zafik Drew in a like-for-like swap at right back.
Okay, don't forget, on the game, 45 minutes.
Meanwhile, DeAndre Bishop is exiting, one of the more dynamic wing presences, replaced by Sean Tomlinson, an attacking midfielder who plays for Giants Grenades FC in the Antiguan and Barbudan top flight. Well, we are back underway. It is the hosts now going right to left on your screen. It is the visitors going from left to right. And as things stand, the latter of which will definitely be the more pleased of the two sides. A direct effort off the kickoff, though, and Dennerville at least gave chase to that. For neutral viewing, I think watching the first half, you'd be best served with a Cuba opener, as you currently have, just due to the fact that now an Antigua and Barbuda side that sat back for the bulk of the first will have to at least press the issue. They make the double change. Isaac for Drew, Tomlinson for Bishop. You wonder if that maybe indicates a switch in formation to a 4-back in the hopes of chasing this a bit more. You know, for Cuba, unchanged. The only thing to worry about is Cavafe. The experienced center back is on a yellow card. Well, here's the goal scorer, Bravo. He ushers this wide, and Aguirre gives chase. And it just to win this back. Balls for Matos. Back for Bravo again. May have come off worse for wear after that tackle. Hadid. Dennerville, the most space he's had all afternoon. Just beyond the reach of Hadid, to the chagrin of the home faithful in attendance. A lot of promise on this break, and it is frankly a ball that lacks accuracy from Dennerville. Plays it too far behind Hadid, and you could hear the collective groans throughout the crowd. Well, Pedro Bravo, the goal scorer, is still dealing with the after effects of that sliding tackle. This is Jorge Aguirre, who's slow to get up. Well, if you are just joining us, we welcome you into ABFA Technical Center in Pigots, Antigua. We are just about 10 minutes outside the capital city of St. John's in Antigua and Barbuda. It was a rather cagey first half, and it was one-way traffic as well. Cuba at least pressing the issue, but unable to pick apart a surprisingly obdurate back line. But they finally found the breakthrough off of a corner, a terrific first-time hit from Pedro Bravo to open the scoring, and now it forces the hosts to come out of their shell a bit more as Aguirre is gingerly walking off under his own power. And about set to get things back underway with Cuba temporarily down to 10. it is a Cuban squad that has plenty of talent on the bench. The likes of Dairon Reyes and Mikel Reyes, two players who are very experienced in the national team fold, both ready to check in at a moment's notice, as Aguirre will now return to the pitch for Cuba. And here is Hernandez. Bypasses one defender. Laying it off for Bravo. Flipped at the heels again. And this time the referee blows up for a free kick. An immediate yellow card brandished as well to the substitute Tomlinson.
You know what is this? You allow him to go through in the ball that is our ball. You cannot do that. You change the essence of the game. He cannot come in there.
We see once again, Bravo just gets there first and is dealt a very painful blow at the end of it as a result. The substitute Tomlinson booked within 4 minutes of his first involvement. This is a very promising spot for a set piece. As stand, Aguirre and Espino appear to be the two most likely players to take this. Aguirre to take, and overcooked it. Didn't wrap his boot around it to the degree he was hoping. Rabayo. Daly loses out here. This is Catasus. 15 minutes gone. And there is some more initiative being flashed by Antigua and Barbuda. Bravo. Well, entering today, an 11-match winless run dating back to late 2023 in all comps for Antigua and Barbuda. As things stand, that is set to continue. And it would be a pretty devastating break. In fact, it would be a 6th defeat in the last 7, dating back to the start of the Nations League play. First ever time Antigua and Barbuda was relegated from League B. Had spent the previous 4 campaigns in that division. This is loose to Detterville. Has a pop. Deflection took the sting out of it. Stabbed away with relative aplomb by Bravo. And Aguirre definitely touched that with his hand. And now some extracurriculars between the two sets of sides. Well, Aguirre's trying to win a free kick. He goes down far too easy. And then his reaction after the fact is, well, a bit extra to say the least. Perhaps fortunate to get off without a booking there. This is a very decent spot for Antigua and Barbuda to cause some trouble. Drake Hadid, 17-year-old who plays for Carolina Core in MLS Next Pro, stands over this. Hadid dinks it in. Stabbed away by Bravo. Only as far as Hadid. Shrugged off it now by Alessio Robayo, who does have options on the break. That has been quite the shift from Robayo. It's just his third international cap and second start for Cuba. An Italian-born player who currently was on loan with the Parma U19s at the tail end of the 24-25 season. He's a product of the Torino Academy, club in Serie A. His quality's been on full display, and he is one of the players, in addition to Aguirre, who have been able to join the fold since early March due to the relaxation of standards with players from being born in other countries of Cuban descent being allowed to represent their nation as well. Dual nationals now being permitted. Well, for Taj Moore, it was a strong first half. For the most part, there is literally nothing he could do about the Pedro Bravo opener. Just so perfectly worked, and it's more on his defense for leaving Bravo unmarked. But prior to that, flashed good timing, came off his line when he needed to, not taking any unnecessary risk despite being under fire. Detterville, low cross in, it's to the near post, and Rosarena had some trouble with it. Raiko Rosarena, I've already talked about his experience with Las Vegas Lights, was previously with Tampa Bay Rowdies as well, so he's played at a pretty high level of competitive football in the U.S. Also a very athletic family. His father, a pro goalkeeper. His brother Randy, if the last name sounds familiar, was the 2020 ALCS MVP. Now plays for the Mariners, of course, was with the Rays at the time, so he's the brother of Randy Rosarena for those in the States watching. Or those baseball fans across the globe. Cavafit. Calvo. You wonder how Cuba toes the line between hunting the second and not overextending themselves. Although to their credit, Antigua and Barbuda has flashed very little counterattacking prowess today, despite being on the back foot for more than 75% of proceedings. Hernandez gets this back on the 1-2. Hunting the run of Aguirre. Hernandez again. Catasus. We inch towards the hour mark, and the status quo from the first half has resumed. Aguirre looking through to Bravo. Daly just able to get his feet underneath him, and now space for Bramble on the break. First time he's had proper time and space. Lays it off, crossed in. Espino, no mistakes, just cleared for security. In a corner for Antigua and Barbuda. And now you hear the collective roar throughout the stadium, trying to urge the Bena boys forward. And we'll make another change.
Number 13, in goes number 11.
It is Shalon Knight who will enter. Drake Hadid exits in a like-for-like swap up front. A decent shift from Hadid. Jacques Passy looking to reinvigorate things up front. Shalon Knight, a 25-year-old who plays in the Antigua and Barbuda Premier Division. Corner to be taken by Isaac. toward the heart of the area, and it just whistles wide. Tomlinson had a free header and just couldn't steer it on target. Well, what a moment that could have been. Another corner on the way. You get a look at this. Sensational delivery. It just deflects off Bravo. May have been destined to go beyond the far post anyways. But a warning shot from the Bennett boys. Now arced in towards the back stick. Was that the moment for Antigua and Barbuda to find their way back into this? You wonder how much of a role the deflection played by Bravo. It appeared to be destined to go wide anyways, but definitely helped matters for Cuba. Calvo strolling ahead. Snatched back by Tomlinson. The substitute nearly had a very memorable moment in his international career. Maybe more memorable for a less fortunate reason. It's over the top. Rosarena off his line and handles that relatively confidently. We are now at the hour mark here in Antigua and Barbuda. Sam Goldfarb bringing you all of the action from the ABFA Technical Center, the home of Antigua and Barbuda's Football Association. A 1-0 scoreline in favor of the visitors, though. Pedro Bravo opening the scoring on the stroke of halftime. And it has largely been bossed by Cuba over the course of this hour. But there was a heart and throat moment for Los Leones del Caribe moments ago. Fortunate break, Sean Tomlinson, a free header that just went mercifully wide. Perhaps signs of life now from the hosts as they look for an equalizer. Isaac. Appeals for handball. They're not granted by our official Quincy Williams. Isaac with a crunching challenge at the end of that interchange. Oh, relatively well timed. Does get a bit of Hernandez's leg, but also gets the ball. And Cuba now making its first change. Dairon Reyes, plenty of potential in his boots, as well as Martin. Aguirre will exit up front, a like-for-like swap. And a couple more changes as well. It is Cavafe who exits for Leandro Mena in a change in the heart of defense. And then Martin up front for Aguirre. So it's Reyes, Mena, and Martin all in. It is Matos, Aguirre, and Cavafe all out. Martin, 19-year-old striker who currently plays in the Swiss 4th tier with the Verdun FC's 2nd team. He was born in Switzerland but opted to represent Cuba, and he earned his first national team call-up, so he makes his international debut. Meanwhile, Dairon Reyes is an experienced veteran at just 21 years of age of the Cuban national team ranks. This is cap number 19 for him. Someone who for years was in the Inter Miami youth system and then the 2nd team before being released ahead of this year. Catasus. And here is Reyes' first touch. Definitely seems to be an intent of chasing a second from Uniales Castillo's bunch. They do not want to leave this up to chance by any means. No, Antigua and Barbuda has put the lead in rather little jeopardy. The corner was the warning shot perhaps Coach Castillo needed to make the alterations in pursuit of a second. Orlando Calvo. Mena, another young center back who is hoping for bigger minutes. It is important to note for Antigua and Barbuda, not at its full strength. It is a U20 heavy squad, but their longtime presence in midfield and defense, Quentin Griffith, who's also top 5 all-time in goals, not in the fold. Here's a cross in. Rabayo got on the edge of it, but rather routine for Taj Moore. One of the better crosses we've seen out of open play for Cuba. Was a difficult angle from Rabayo. Decently comfortable. But Antigua and Barbuda is lacking the player who's made the second most caps in national team history in Griffith. Been a big presence in the Nations League as well as last wave of World Cup qualifying. So to not have him is definitely a blow to contend with. Usual man that dons their number 10 kit.
Cuba entered again number 11, Onel Hernandez, and Eagles number 7, William Pozu. It is still 1-0 in favor of Cuba in the 65th minute of play.
Did 7 enter? Because there was... Detterville. Samir Daly, not been shy about roaming forward when given the opportunity to do so. Isaac. Working it towards the back post. Ramble was a couple footsteps from it. Also, one more change took place. Leon Pozo entered for Onel Hernandez. Bicycle kick. It fell very kindly. Just clattered over the crossbar. Well, that's the best bout of possession we've seen from the Bena boys so far. Detterville did very well to lay that off for his teammate. Maybe not as routine as Yasniel Unielis Castillo and company would have hoped for. Michael Rosarena beginning to be called into action a bit more frequently. There was one more change for Cuba, so a quartet of alterations now. Leon Pozo in place of Onel Hernandez in a pretty much identical change on the left flank. Leon Pozo, a 27-year-old, he plays in the Norwegian second tier at the moment. Moved to Norway at just 4 years of age after being born in Cuba. 4 international goals to his name, and is another piece in the firepower-laden Cuban bench. Reyes. There's the change confirmed. But making them in waves as they look to apply more pressure. Also is offside. Well, for Cuba, if they can see this out, they would have inside track on a spot in the top 2. entering the final match day, barring a comprehensive Cayman Islands victory over Honduras tomorrow. It would be monumental for a number of reasons, because Cuba was eliminated in the first round of qualifying last cycle, as was Antigua and Barbuda. They've only reached one World Cup in their history. It came in 1938 when they reached the round of 16. And after not competing in qualifiers from 1950 through 66, they did threaten to make some noise at the tail end of the 20th century. Came just 2 points from qualifying in 1982, but since then, they've never truly flirted with World Cup qualification. Definitely have not done so this century. Chance to reach the final round would at least open the door in an expanded World Cup field for them to make some noise. At a minimum, 6 Concacaf teams will qualify. At a maximum, we could see as many as 8. Either tally would be the most ever in Concacaf World Cup qualifying history. Martin playing it forward to Rabayo. As Calvo in support. Reyes was loose for Pozo. Ultimately, Sting taken out of that effort. And now Detterville with some opportunity to sprint forward. An excellent challenge from Mena. Every time it seemed like Raheem Detterville has some space to roam, there has been a red shirt to greet him instantly. Final 20 minutes here from Antigua and Barbuda. Still a 1-0 advantage in favor of Cuba. Pedro Bravo striking in stoppage time of the first half, as Raheem Detterville still slow to return to his feet. Been the most dangerous presence for the Bena boys going forward, unsurprisingly, but also has taken a number of knocks in the process.
Vicio! Vicio! Can he do it or no? Vicio!
And well, a quick breather here. Again, a warm day on the island of Antigua. Hydration breaks always key, and both teams taking a cooling break just shy of 20 minutes to play. Unielis Castillo still urgent on the touchline. He understands the importance of a 3 points, especially given the nature of which they've overrun Antigua and Barbuda for large spells this afternoon. He cannot afford to let anything slip in the closing stages. Meanwhile, for the hosts, it only takes one moment of magic at this stage to completely neutralize all of that dominance and at least keep yourself reasonably in contention for the top 2 before the final match day. A defeat today would put them in elimination territory, because then Cuba would be on 6 points and there would be a 5-point gap with just a match to play. So Antigua and Barbuda cannot afford to lose at any cost. A draw would put them on the brink, but would not officially do them in by any means. Change taking place, and it is Raheem Detterville who exits. A rather unfortunate break for the Bena boys, whose most promising attacking presence is no longer in the fold. It's replaced by Keon Green up front.
In the 73rd minute of play. It is still 1-0 in favor of Cuba.
Keon Green, 24-year-old, plays for Potters Tigers FC in Antigua and Barbuda's domestic league. Just his 6th international cap, all of which have come as a substitute. Reyes Now room to roam. Dairon Reyes plays it forward to Pozo. Not a bad spell, but lacking final product yet again. It may be a tense final 15 and change for Mr. Castillo on the touchline. I think he understands the importance psychologically of what 3 points would do in a match like this. Maybe not one that has been as free-flowing as his side would have hoped, and definitely not one in which they've been able to pick apart their hosts, but they've had control of the match with possession and have ceded very few opportunities. Be rewarded with a victory in which you would argue your performance merits is imperative. There's a dangerous ball. Somehow Cuba's able to prevent that for going out for a corner. If they do see this out, it would be Cuba's first actual victory on the pitch in this wave of World Cup qualifying. Again, remember, for those joining us, the 3-0 win over the Cayman Islands was awarded to Cuba due to the fact that the Cayman Islands were unable to travel to Santiago. But either way, Cuba will not complain, because that would put them in a spot where they take on Bermuda in a 6-pointer that could alter the landscape of the group and define who reaches that top 2 on their home patch in Santiago, the Estadio Antonio Maceo on June 10th on Tuesday. They still need to take care of business in the final quarter of an hour and change here, though. Well, Antigua and Barbuda's World Cup life, hopes I should say, hang in the balance. Reyes. Here's the goal scorer, Bravo. It's remarkable how well he has fit into the side. It is just his 5th international cap, as we mentioned before. He's 23 years old. He's worked his way into Los Leones del Caribe and the regular squad, and has fit the squad like a glove, at least today. Reyes. Bravo again. Terrific switch to Calvo, who takes this down nicely. Crosses it in, runs all the way through. And Tomlinson content to let it roll out for a throw.
Here we have a substitution for Antigua Barbuda.
Well, another wave of changes for Antigua and Barbuda.
And in goal number 20,
Vaughn Jackson, the 16-year-old, making an international appearance, replaces TJ Bramble, and that is definitely attack-minded swap. Jackson being a bit more forward-thinking than the classic hybrid 6'8" of Bramble. While Jackson plays for Aston Villa in Antigua and Barbuda. Still 1-0 to the Cubans. Pedro Bravo, the difference maker. Question is, can the hosts throw a wrench in these plans and keep themselves afloat, at least for the time being, in Group A of qualifying. Luther Wilden trying to organize the troops. Longtime member of Stevenage Town. Click on header, falls to Bravo. Here's Katasus. Pozo. Well done from Rosarena. Now space to break. Rabayo giving chase. Loose pass back to Bravo, who handles that with relative comfort. Tyrone Reyes. Calvo. Perfect ball through. It's Pozo laying it off for Katasus. Just wide. Very slick bit of build-up, though, from Cuba. Antigua and Barbuda beginning to get stretched. Pozo draws two defenders. Katasus able to run onto it and just can't redirect it on frame. But definitely more for Taj Moore to contend with here. Final 10 minutes now from Pigots on the outskirts of St. John's. Sam Goldfarb bringing you all of the action from the island of Antigua. A 1-0 scoreline in favor of Cuba in this crucial six-pointer. Martin all the way through to Pozo. This is Willian Pozo off the bar and somehow does not clear the line. What a strike that was. And everything but reward on the score sheet for the substitute. The hosts still remain afloat for now. You wonder if that chance becomes a pivotal moment in the story of this match, or rather, whether it is just a footnote. Final 9 minutes will go a long way to determining where that lies in the plot of this story. Tyrone Reyes loses out here. Morgan roaming forward from fullback. An effort from long range, right at Rosarena. It was worth a hit from Jackson.
Ladies and gentlemen, the total attendance for today's match is 428. We say thanks to all fans attending the Concacaf Qualifiers for 2026.
Carlos Espino has handled the center back role with significant confidence, despite being more of a defensive midfielder. Tyrone Reyes broken up confidently. does roll out of play for what appears to be a Cuban corner kick. And that it is.
6 seconds, there's no excuse! 6 seconds!
Cuba procured their first from a set piece. Taken without swing. Or Bravo again. He was not far off, but the whistle sounded anyways. Corner went out of play before it reached Bravo. There will be a lot of interested eyes on the fourth official in about 5 minutes' time now. Not too many stoppages in this second half, but the cooling break definitely will add to the tally, and FIFA paying more attention to trying to increase the amount of stoppage time to reflect stoppages. That's important. Jackson would have been likely offside had he collected that. Martin. Orlando Calvo in acres of space. Early ball forward towards Dairon Reyes. Runs all the way out of play.
And here we have a substitution for Cuba. And continued
One final change being readied by Cuba, Marcos Campos. We'll look to see this out. The 19-year-old who also plays at Antigua in the Costa Rica second tier. He is the newest addition to Los Leones del Caribe. He replaces Alessio Robayo, a more defensive-minded swap, as Cuba looks to see this out. His Campos' international debut as well. It was a promising spell for Robayo. Definitely looked mature beyond his years, did the 18-year-old. Now it is about trying to secure things for Cuba. Catasus. About 4 minutes to play. Still 1-0 in favor of Cuba. Pozo. Catasus. Jackson able to shrug his defender off it. And he's sent to the deck after the challenge. That's Tyrick Hughes, who is a bit worse for wear after this coming together. Just shoved in the back, and that's what drew the official's ire. He's played every minute so far. At just 19 years old, just his 5th international start. The youth movement throughout the Antigua and Barbuda side, evidenced by the number of teenagers and players in their early 20s selected for the 11 today, let alone the bench. It is probably about time for Jacques Passy to throw caution to the wind. It is about time for that bravery to be displayed. Hooking ball towards Green. It falls. Shalon Knight on the half volley, but he can't keep it down. Positioned himself quite nicely for that. Takes an awkward bounce here. Very high, hard to time. Knight lashes at it and gets too far underneath it. And we are hearing word that the number of added minutes will be relatively substantial, upwards of 6. And we are not exactly on the stroke of full time just yet. Calvo. Reyes. Excellent invention here. Played forward, laid back off. Reyes got the final touch. Trickled out of play for a corner. Well, Dairon Reyes has been at the center of everything positive for Cuba going forward since subbing on. The 1-2 leaves him with a decent chance here. At least allows them to win a corner and milk more time. All eyes towards Timothy Derry in a matter of seconds at this point. Cuba in no rush to take this. Enrico Rosarena is dealing with what appears to be some cramping. He is definitely the elder statesman of the Cuban goalkeeping room at the moment. Ismael Morgado, as well as Rudy Holdilin, is on the bench.
7 minutes of
No motion towards the touchline just yet. The 6 minutes have been confirmed.
7 minutes.
And now it's moved to 7 in response to the stoppage. So an added minute for Cuba to contend with. And we finally are about to get our referee signal. Scored in stoppage time from a near identical scenario in the first half. Do they have another in their locker? It's taken short, and it is a training ground routine that did not come off. Pozo. Calvo. Trying to dart forward. He is dispossessed. Morgan and company just struggling to play out of that pressure. It's the story of the afternoon for the host today. Rosarena seems no worse for wear after that earlier scare. Tomlinson. Reyes snatching control of it. Tomlinson giving chase, and he ran out of room. And now also dealing with some cramp issues, it seems. The humidity beginning to take its toll on the players. And it is actually Tyrick Hughes who's down. The 6 and the 8 on the back of the jerseys tend to clash. So the 19-year-old Hughes, who has played every minute of this contest, dealing with some after effects of that high workload. Inside the final 4 minutes of the added 7. And at this point, I think Cuba is content to knock it about and play some keep away. Martin takes an elbow to the face. A card is brandished, and it's red. Leroy Graham has been giving his marching orders in the tail end of this. Well, it's definitely, oh yes, a forearm across the face. It appears rather unnecessary, although Graham's reaction seemed to indicate he didn't know what happened. Either way, he is given a premature shower with just 3 minutes remaining in added time. Leroy Graham, the 25-year-old native of Birmingham, England, who plays in the Antiguan top flight, sent off with a straight red. A forearm directly across the face of Martin. The frustration getting the better of him. And if Antigua and Barbuda are to find a recipe back, it will have to be a man down.
Red card issued to number 17 of Antigua Barbuda, Leroy Graham, into 90 plus 4 minutes. Red card to Mr. Leroy Graham of Antigua Barbuda.
Okay, do it up.
Oh, you wonder if that is the final blow to Antigua and Barbuda's World Cup hopes. An unlikely task has just grown that much less likely. "90 seconds remain of the added 7. Will likely go beyond those 7 minutes, though. If this result holds, Cuba would move into the top 2 of the Group A table. Antigua and Barbuda, meanwhile, would be eliminated from round 3 contention in the Concacaf 2026 World Cup qualifying cycle. And Cuba tack on another for good measure. Katasus. Hozo. Escorted back to Martin. Seems to be moving well again after taking that shot to the face. Calvo. Bravo, the goal scorer, the man who's made the difference. It is a loose ball, though, and a chance on the break. This is Keon Green. Espino does just enough to make himself an obstacle. Pozo. May become a race to the corner flag at this stage. We are beyond the added 7, and now all eyes are on our lead official, Quincy Williams. Pedro Bravo. Campos. Rosarena under fire. We'll just bash it long. And the question is there time for one final break forward for the Bena boys? Long throw. Green. Morgan. Dispossessed. Cuba escorting out of danger for the time being. And there is the full-time whistle. Cuba claims a desperately needed 3 points, and they surge into the top 2 of the Group A table. Their hopes of qualifying for the 2026 World Cup remain alive and well for the time being. Meanwhile, Antigua and Barbuda, the journey comes to an unfortunate conclusion. Eliminated after just 3 matches, a second defeat in the first 3 in the competition. Cuba earns the desperately needed points. It was an affair that wasn't exactly pleasing on the eye, but they provide the one moment of difference. Pedro Bravo's stoppage time first half strike on a lovely volley directly from a corner, which was the lone moment that was required to separate Cuba from its hosts this afternoon. We will take a quick breather when we return to look at the full-time highlights and the stats from the 90 minutes that you just witnessed. Stick with us here from Antigua and Barbuda. We're back here from Antigua and Barbuda as we get a look at the full-time highlights from what was a hard-earned 1-0 Cuba victory in this pivotal 6-pointer in Group A of the Concacaf 2026 World Cup qualifiers. The storyline was Cuba dominating the run of play, but very little incision throughout that first half. A lot of settling for long-range efforts because they were struggling to build through Antigua and Barbuda's surprisingly secure back line. There were some moments where maybe the Bena boys flashed some promise on the break, but nothing definitive that ever troubled Raiko Rosarena. And eventually, as Cuba continued to twist the screws, the set pieces began to mount. Free kicks, corner kicks, and then yellow cards also accrued to some of Antigua and Barbuda's players. The issue was accuracy on crosses in the final third. You wondered if maybe that would just hold them back. Alessio Rabaio here had the best moment of the match to date for a Cuban side that couldn't quite play through. And then as the first half wore on, eventually Cuba began to rack up some corner kick opportunities. The biggest one you'll see in a matter of moments was the moment of difference here today. Rabaio winning a corner kick for Cuba, and then as the half wore on, after this nearly disastrous moment for Pedro Bravo, you saw him get on the score sheet. This cross going out of play, but about 3-4 minutes later, after this mad scramble in front of goal where Jorge Aguirre made a menace of himself, and Pedro Bravo had another long-range effort deflected, he finally provided the spectacular. In stoppage time of the first half, a lovely first-time hit runs onto it perfectly on the corner kick and giving Cuba the 1-0 advantage just before halftime. And we come to find out that was the moment of difference. Bravo's first international goal in just his 5th cap. We went to halftime with Cuba leading, and from there, most of the chances broke Cuba's way in the second as well. This was the biggest moment for Antigua and Barbuda. The free header for Sean Tomlinson, which he just heads wide, and ultimately that was their best chance of the match. You saw Cuba continue to create in the second half, but not enough to trouble Taj Moore. A lot of excellent interplay here. This is probably the best chance of the second. Diego Catasus bashing it wide, but ultimately nothing to show for it other than this effort that clattered off the crossbar from Willian Pozo. We wondered if that would be a moment they look back on with regret. I don't think they will unless it comes down to goal difference in the group standings. And then this late, a definitive red card. Leroy Graham, a forearm to the face of Martin. 17-on-17 violation. He is sent off just moments from stoppage time, and that is where things finished. A rather controlling Cuban performance, despite maybe not creating all of the chances they would have hoped. They provide the definitive moment through Pedro Bravo's late opener in the first half. Here's your look at the full-time stats, and it is rather dominant for Cuba, outshooting Antigua and Barbuda 19-4. I think the moment, or the stat Unielis Castillo may have displeasure for is the only 3 shots on target from 19 shots, but dominating the ball with 74% of the possession. And that puts them in a favorable spot now to potentially advance out of Group A. They head into their final match against Bermuda at home in what could define the complexion of the group at the end of proceedings. Meanwhile, for Antigua and Barbuda, they crash out of the competition. They will play their final match on the final day at Honduras, but their chances of qualifying come to a close here this afternoon. So for our terrific crew from Antigua and Barbuda, I'm Sam Goldfarb saying so long, where it finishes Cuba 1, Antigua and Barbuda 0. It is Bravo's opener in the late stages of the first half, which makes the difference. Have a great rest of your afternoon, everyone. Cuba prevails in 1-0 fashion.